Hello and welcome to the LRM podcast, sponsored by Adrian Flux Insurance, live. This seemed like a great idea when we said we would do it, and now it's a bit daunting. But thank you for coming and sitting in the beer tent with us.
It sounds like a really good idea to drink beer in the daytime.
Well, yeah, I mean you can't drink all day if we don't start in the morning.
No, I don't know if I can hear you actually on the mic. Can we hear
Can
you?
you hear me now?
No, try that again.
What about now?
Yeah, so this is actually going live. Well, not live, we're recording live here, which will actually go out on the podcast next Wednesday. So anybody that listens to the podcast will know that these go out every Wednesday at 6 a.m. And doing it live feels really weird because we're not here in our own little studio, as it were.
No, but we have brought a bit of the studio with us. The salmon sofa is here in all its glory, or at least part of it is. There was a casualty, however, of the salmon sofa, and I found the wobbly bit.
Yeah, so one of the legs, this has survived for many decades in the basement at LRM HQ, and all of a sudden it became a thing when LRM contributor Greg King wore a t-shirt last year of Save the Salmon Sofa. So now we realise that people are aware that this is a very, very dated sofa. Quite comfy nonetheless, but one of the feet has fallen off that one. And then, as I went to pick it up, a Land Rover that was coming into the camping yesterday drove over it.
Squashed its foot.
The seat is no more. So
it's fine.
Yeah, but this is going on tour. It's on tour today and tomorrow. And it'll be on tour another couple of shows this year as well.
The salmon sofa's got a busy year, so it's obviously we're doing it, as you said, 1 o'clock today, now, and 1 o'clock tomorrow, and then it's going to Billing, and then it's going to the Big Land Rover Fest in July as well. So yeah, it's a busy time for the trusty salmon sofa. But yeah, here we are, LRM Live 2026.
Yeah, when we devised this podcast a couple of years ago, and we're on about 104, 105 episodes now, this seemed like a really good idea to do this live, and it is quite nerve-wracking.
The thing is, I think we're lucky in that with being into Land Rovers as they are, the scene how it is, the number of events that are around, we've always got something to talk about. We haven't fallen flat yet. We haven't sat there and twiddled our thumbs and gone, what are we going to say? Because there's always, if we haven't been somewhere or done something will have happened in our week that's Land Rover related, because we just love Land Rovers and we're always around them. So there's never any shortage of stuff to talk about, which is great. And of course, we've had some fantastic guests over the last 104 episodes as well. And we'll be welcoming a few of them back over the next couple of days.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of the guests and people that you've not heard from before as well. We get to talk about Land Rovers every single day of our lives, and you think, well, don't you get bored with it? But it's we say about this community all the time, don't we? The Land Rover community, and nothing is better than the community that you see outside there. And you see people around the arena, and you see people with the barbecues having fun, and this is what it's all about.
It was so lovely yesterday when we were sort of finishing setting up and people started rolling in, campers started coming in, all the traders that we like to welcome to our events, and there's so many familiar faces and so many new faces as well, because it's really important that the sort of younger generations, God, I sound old, the younger generations come up into Land Rovers. And I think things like Mini Rovers, who are right outside the beer tent where we're recording, and the Boom Racing stand with the live action radio control arena is what sparks that flame to get younger people into the full size stuff later on.
Yeah, I was talking to a young chap earlier on, in fact, that started his career early. He's in fact in the room as we speak. Number one fan, Ted, I believe your name is. And Ted, if you'd like to come up to the LRM podcast, because he listens to us every week, bless him.
Does he?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, super fan.
He is a super fan.
Come on, Ted. Let's have a chat.
As long as you don't eat Martin's pizza, you're more than welcome.
I haven't had a chance to eat it yet, so you're more than welcome to have some. Ted, nice to meet you. How are you?
Good.
Is this your first time to LRM Live, or are you a repeat visitor?
Yeah, first time.
Are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah.
What's your favourite bit?
Probably the scale medals at the Lime Arena.
Excellent. We love to hear it. Quite a new part in the magazine, actually, and one that's really sort of taken off. So are you going to be hassling your mum and dad to get you a radio-controlled Land Rover?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know which one you would like?
The FMS Camel Trophy, the 10th scale.
Okay. You've got a few to choose from. You could go for Defender, Range Rover, or Discovery. So what's at the top of your list?
Discovery?
He wants a Discovery, an excellent choice indeed.
Isn't it great? So how old are you, Ted?
9.
So you're nearly 8. God, you're nearly 9, or you
Yeah.
are 9?
I am 9.
You are 9. Excellent. So a 9-year-old and a Discovery Camel Trophy. I mean, that hasn't been a thing for decades, and it still inspires youngsters now to get into it.
I think I mean, you only have to look at the camel. Well, I know there's a few camels dotted around the showground this weekend. On the Camel Trophy tribute stand, on CVC register, there's a couple of camels there. They're really coming into their own as something that gets restored, and of course the fact that the videos exist on YouTube of all the footage back through the events. It's no wonder it sparks people's imaginations, because it was just, you know, it's an unreal event, and it's something that will never be repeated. So it's great. Do you like watching the Camel Trophy stuff?
Yeah, very much. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Could you name the tyre that was fitted to the Camel Trophy Land Rovers? Do you know that?
No, right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all right. We'll let you off. It's a fine tyre, one that we have a little bit of a thing about. But yeah,
You have a fetish about tyres.
I don't know if I go that far, Steve, but I do enjoy that. I do enjoy. Yeah, no, it's good. Ted, thank you ever so much for coming. We'll hopefully speak to you a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So Ted has got, so he's trying to convince his mum to buy a daily driver. But a daily driver, you wouldn't imagine what it would be.
Right. I'm listening.
A Land Rover Series 3, did you say?
Yeah.
So I said he probably wouldn't want to use that as a daily.
No.
As a 9-year-old.
Yeah. It's probably going to be very cold inside.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, that is accurate. To be fair. So, what sort of Land Rover would you like to own when you're older?
It's probably going to be a Discovery 2 or something like that.
A good choice. A good choice indeed.
I can see now popcorn limiter exhaust, big tyres, lots of flashing lights.
Do you like modified stuff, or are you more a standard chap?
Probably more, right, modified stuff.
Fair play.
Excellent.
Fair play.
It starts here, doesn't it, at such a young age. And I remember being 9 years old when I was first into Land Rovers.
All those decades ago.
I know. Do you know what? It was a long, long time ago now. And yet, that's where it starts, that inspiration, walking around shows like this and, you know, all the other Land Rover shows throughout the year, seeing Land Rovers and what can be done to them. There is no two Land Rovers the same out there.
Indeed, and actually our Big Land Rover Fest in July, the 11th and 12th of July, will be a great place to see exactly what they can do, because we've got an on-site off-road course which you can see right on the edge of the showground. So if you haven't already booked your tickets for that, check it out. It's going to be a great event.
Yeah, in fact, I think we've got a poster for it just there. And that picture there is pre-modification of your own Land Rover, wasn't it? In the making of the off-road course.
Pre-modification?
Yeah, you kind of modified the front end of it.
Yes, yeah. That I can't see, because they've positioned that orange roundel right in the way of where the damage was and that lump of earth. But yeah, there was a slight incident in some of the setting out of the off-road course. Totally my fault, and you'll read all about that in the current issue, which is we've got some of on the LRM stand, and of course you can sort yourself out with a great subscription deal as well.
So yeah, that show was born from. I mean, we've written about it in a show guide already. We sit around a campfire, we talk Land Rovers, and we think, what does the market want? What do we want to do? And we wanted to launch another one of these, but in a bigger scale yet again, because we want to do this more than once a year.
100%. Yeah, there's. Well, this is proof, isn't it? People come out in their droves. They just love to celebrate Land Rovers. They like to see what's around. There's fantastic range of trade this weekend, and clubs come out, and it's a great opportunity, a great excuse to get together really and just enjoy what we love.
Yeah, not forgetting tonight in here, there's going to be a band on as well, which is the entertainment's always important. That social aspect of having a drink, and hopefully the weather will not put pay to people being outside as well.
Definitely, yeah. Fingers crossed. I was going to say, actually, we have our awards coming up tomorrow, of course, as well on the Sunday. So we'll be going around the campsite and going around all the trade village and keeping a beady eye out for our sort of top picks for a variety of categories, sponsored, of course, by our friends at 4x4 Tyres.
Yeah, with regards to like winning an award, people often ask me, you know, what do I need to do to build like a cover car of the magazine, and what do I need to do to win an award? It's not always the obvious thing, is it, when we go around looking for these vehicles?
No, and a lot of the time it's not just about the Land Rover either. It's actually about the people who own it and the story that they've got to tell. Because so many, I mean, Land Rovers have been involved in people's lives from very, very early ages, and people grow up with them, and that's sort of, it becomes intertwined with their lives. So there's a lot of really interesting stories out there that aren't just about the vehicle. It's about how they've developed and how they've come to be with their owners. So there's always more to it than meets the eye.
And that's what makes an interesting story. And then, you know, we go around looking for the best original. You know, we're not there counting rivets, for example, but you just know, don't you? You see a Land Rover going, yes, that's got what I suppose you call it the X factor.
Yeah, 100%. You first impressions everything, and there are some absolute stunners here this weekend, and I've already scoped out a couple I think might well be in the running for an award. So if you've got something that you think might be special enough to make the grade, come and see us at the Land Rover Monthly gazebo. We'll see what's what.
Yeah, we'll have a wander around because it's a good excuse for us to take time out to have a look at all the fantastic vehicles here, because there's some really, really fantastically turned out stuff. I mean, even Greg's put some polish on my Prima Gay 90. And notice it was very clean.
It looked absolutely mint as it was doing a terrible job at Carkhana.
It was doing a terrible job.
It was great. We'll have Greg up here in a minute. He can talk us through exactly what went wrong, I think.
Yeah, I've never actually done Carkhana myself. I've witnessed people doing things that look fairly accurate and inaccurate, should we say?
Carkhana, for those who haven't seen it already, it's in the arena. We run it once a day, and it's essentially a sort of driving test / obstacle course where you'll be challenged to put your Land Rover in various different scenarios, garages, parallel parking, like precision driving, and that your score gets added up at the end, and whoever has the lowest score is the winner.
Because there is a reigning champion here, isn't there? Doing it for the third or fourth time this time?
I believe this is his third time, and he's won the previous 2 years, so it's all to play for. He's got his title to defend, to go for the hat-trick.
And so when you're driving around between cones and things, it sounds a bit mundane, but actually that's his sort of premise for learning to drive off-road and not hitting, immovable objects.
As I found out.
Yes.
It's
well, the immovable object you hit was Neil Watson's serious terrain about there, but
which is actually here to be used to his winching display. So if you look really, really closely at the back of it, you might see some where the coming together happened. But yeah, absolutely, it's all about knowing where your vehicle is, about wheel placement, about grip levels, things like that, and it all begins. I guess a lot of clubs as well running the Tyro trials, which you can do from the age of 13. Carkhana's a great sort of foot in the door to get started with that, and then into your off-road driving career.
So Ted, you've got 4 more years before you could actually drive a Land Rover off-road in a competitive environment.
Yeah.
That sounds like you need to get your mum and dad involved in that. So look up Tyro.
Yeah.
So that is for youngsters, isn't it, essentially, and to move on to RTV, which I think you need to be 18 for, do you?
Yeah, you need a license for RTV, but Tyro's still pretty challenging and good fun, so get involved.
Yeah, start with your radio controlled, move on.
Ted, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been lovely to have you. We're going to get Greg up now. Greg's going to come and have a chat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you ever so much. Give it up for Ted.
We're proud to partner with Adrian Flux, the UK's largest specialist motor insurance broker. If you're looking for Land Rover insurance, they should be your first stop. They even offer up to 15% off your premium for Owners Club members. Just call them directly on 0344 728 0417 for a quote and let them know you belong to an Owners Club to get a great deal.
So
Give it
Greg
up,
King
Greg
on the
King.
list. Yes. Probably the third time, actually, Greg, you've been on the San Antonio.
Yeah, I did one quite a while ago, and then I was on with Ian Arthur. Oh, crikey. I was on with Ian Arthur a little while ago, yeah. So, third time, yes.
Yeah, so the second time was basically an excuse for us lot to go out for lunch and have a couple of beers, I think. We sort of pretend we're working, don't we?
No, it's always a very entertaining morning recording. It's always a very entertaining morning recording, yeah.
Yeah, so we get chatting, don't we? And so you've you're an ex-engineer for Land Rover.
Yeah, I started as an apprentice. I wasn't even quite 17 when I started, and I'd moved up from the farm in Devon. Because, well, a bit like our previous guest Ted, I was just a Land Rover nut, and it kind of turned into what ended up being a 25-year career for me.
So Land Rover, I mean, I think they have a recruitment drive at the moment, don't they? Because they're desperately looking for the right candidates to sort of take the company forward into the next level. And, you know, from the back in the day when you began as an apprentice, I mean, a few decades ago, you know, things have changed considerably, haven't they, in the manufacturing process?
Well, first of all, I still haven't worked out who's older, you or I, but I think we're similar. But yes.
I mean, let's not get anyone
If I was to say that I started in the mid 90s, and of course they were still making. It shows how things have changed. What was currently in production, they were in the last year of 200 TDI. They made Discovery. They made Range Rover Classic. 38A was in pre-production, so the line was there, and obviously Defender TDI was in production. That was it. There was 3 model lines, and everything was coming off of the site at Solihull. There was no Halewood, there was no Slovakian plant, and now you look at the business and it's totally different. And not only that, back in my day. You know,
it's older than me when this is back in my day.
But the
during the war,
but you know, it was mechanical. You know, it was good old mechanical engineering. And now you've got you know, over-the-air software updates. You've got integration. You've got increasing, you know, battery technology, and the people that they need, the apprentices that requires graduates that require today. It's a very different skill set.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 mates who are both, the Land Rover mechanics, shall we say. Oh, one is moved away from being a Land Rover mechanic, but one has absolutely filthy hands and missing bits of nail. The other is immaculately presented, and, you know, he sits there with pretty much a laptop, you know, and there's a completely different contrast in mechanical engineering these days.
I think, but that is one way to upset a modern vehicle technician by saying all you do is sit there with a laptop, because they really don't, to give them credit.
They don't, but a lot of when I'm talking about sort of like fixing issues and things like that, you know, the first thing is depends on what you're working on. Yeah. You know, you're not going to get that sort of guy in a modern Range Rover that's kind of like used to building a Defender. These on.
I think what's interesting is how many people.
Oh, yes.
I was going to say, I think what's interesting is how many people we talk to at events like this that have either got quite often they have an older classic Land Rover, like a Series or an older Defender, but also they daily drive a much more modern car, a much more modern Land Rover product. So sometimes it is both, which is pretty interesting. But certainly the skill set and the mindset as well of owning, you know, different ends of the spectrum, if you like, is pretty interesting. But let's have a quick show of hands. Who owns a 2000 or earlier Land Rover? Quite a few people. 2000 and later? About the same.
Actually, that's surprising.
It's about the same. That is good.
Who owns both?
Yeah.
About to say it again. So, do you know, you can't. We always think that the perfect number of Land Rover is
3.
And I mean, you've probably got 4, and you find it a bit stressful.
No. I haven't got 4 because one's my wife's now.
Oh, is that how you
That's
get around
a thinly veiled excuse, that is.
That's a perfectly valid excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
I've just worked out how I can get another Land Rover on the drive.
You put it in your wife's name.
Yeah.
It's like not yours then.
Yeah, it's someone else's problem.
Well, no, it's still your problem,
Oh, yeah,
but it's technically not yours. But yeah, we've got. Do you know what I think? The demographic, it's not changing, but every event we come to, there seems to be a more sort of diverse collection of Land Rovers that turn up. I don't know, many moons ago, it would literally be series of Defenders, and you might see the odd Range Rover Classic or early Discovery. Whereas now, we've got a Defender Opta here. Do you know what I mean? That's as the very, very highest, the very newest variant of that car, all the way back to late 40s Series 1s and everything in between. So it's great to see.
Yeah, I remember even 30 years ago going to a Land Rover show for the first time. You'd go to the Billing Aquadrome Land Rover show, wouldn't you? And Land Rover shows then, like you say, series Land Rovers are everywhere. And Discovery would come in, and it would make it into the arena because it was so rare to see an enthusiast driving that car. But now, like you say, you've got everything. An enthusiast is driving very, very new stuff.
And it's interesting as well to see. I mean, we've touched on it before in the podcast. The resistance to anything new. We were interviewing some people in the arena earlier on for the Readers Rides live section, and a friend of ours from CVC Register was in his 1984 Series 3. And it reminded me of all the forum posts and things you'd see from years ago of people slating the Series 3 because it had a plastic dash and it had a plastic grille. And it was just, really? Come on.
Yeah, but there's still, let's consider the old boys that still think like that now, that they're stuck at that point in time.
When TD5 came out, there was absolute uproar. How dare you put an ECU in a Defender? And ironically, TD5 has proved to be the most robust engine. I mean, yes, I think it's this, and you talk to people of the generation before that, the move from leaf springs to coils. So there's always been resistance. Always.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, everybody should know that the TD5 is the best engine that Land Rover ever knows.
No, 2-1.
I mean, every time you do this on social media, you get an absolute onslaught of comments about everyone's in a certain camp, aren't they? But I mean, it's nice to be in both, actually, because I quite like the cable-operated accelerator in a TDI, especially off-road, where a TD5 can be a little bit more on-off, especially in low range.
Yeah, they're a little bit more. You know what you're getting with TDI, and that's wherever the throttle is, it's going to do it. It's a cable. There's no thinking behind it. The TD5's a great engine. People really have embraced it, especially in the tuning world. Serious power numbers, and in fact, a great way of segueing beautifully into the latest issue of Land Rover Monthly, which we do have on the stand. It's not actually in shops yet. If you do want to take advantage of the fantastic subscription deals we've got, go pop down to the LRM gazebo. You've been to see a live tuning, haven't you?
Yeah, that was my most recent visit, and the one thing that came out of that, talking to the team at Alive, is how TD5 is such a robust engine, power gains it can deliver. I mean, their demonstration cars, 335 horsepower. And, okay, you might have reservations about longevity, etc. That car has done, I think it had done something like 190,000 miles, and it's been their demo car for years and years and years. So effectively, they'd used it for sort of development and updates, and obviously publicising it, as a demo car. And it just shows how robust the TD5 is, and how eminently tunable TD5 is. I think, this is the thing. I think we joke about TDI, TD5s, and, but I think that the reality is, whatever Land Rover variant you've got, there is so much that you can do with them. And that's what generates, this fantastic show today. All of the traders that are here today is all because of how sort of tunable and modifiable, and even if you just want to restore the Land Rover, how much you can do yourself, and the garages and the specialists that support that.
Yeah, of course, the TD5 was just fitted into Defenders, but Defenders, mainstay stuff out there. People are still developing products for a car that's been out of production for 10 years. In fact, 10 years ago, it was probably the first time I ever met you at the Land Rover factory on the end of the line Defender, and 10 years has gone by like that.
Isn't it? I mean, I know we've spoken this numerous times, but yes, it was. January was the 10th anniversary of Defender finishing, so we're now 10.5 years, without Defender. Yet you look around the show, and the amount of parts that are available is incredible, and I think it's it's so encouraging. And in terms of the balance of people here that we just had the show of hands, whether you have got just old Land Rovers, whether you've got new Land Rovers, it doesn't matter. You can get rid and call them.
Which is why, the auto jumble scene is quite good as well, because, you don't have to spend, strong money on buying new parts all of the time. And a car that's infinitely rebuildable, so good for the environment. They're unbelievable. You can just go down there now and buy a new chassis from Richard Chassis. The trade is here. You could basically build a new Defender walking around here with some old bits thrown in for good measure.
Well, the biggest carbon impact of any vehicle in its lifetime is the building of it. So if you made that car last 30, 40, 50, well, we've had we've had 75-year-old Series 1s today, yeah. I think it's, it is, it's the right way to go.
So your time at Land Rover then, what do you say was the pinnacle of your career? I mean, going back to your sort of, from your apprenticeship to the day you left, what was the sort of pinnacle, would you say?
From an enjoyment point of view, actually, I think my final swan song was Defender Works V8, and I loved working on that because I've always loved Defender. The reason I started working at Land Rover is because we had a 110 on the farm, and I used to drive it as a kid, and everyone's got a connection with the Land Rovers. That was mine. So to work on that project was fantastic. But I mean, also, there were a number of other programs that I involved with. I mean, 50th anniversary. That is one of my first programs out of my apprenticeship. Sort of a good number of years between the two programs, but that was brilliant as well. And there was so many interesting times and so many great people. And it's quite funny actually. The surprising number of faces of employees and ex-employees that have retired or whatever that are at the show today. I bumped into loads of people because there's so many people that work for the organisation that are passionate about what they do. They're passionate about others.
I think that's what's made Land Rover a success. I bumped into Ada Fisher earlier, and I think he works on the production line on the new Range Rover. And he was completely passionate about Camera Trophy, and has his own old Land Rovers as well. And he's just so ingrained in and wants the success of the company. I think everyone's behind them 100%. Whether you're a modern Land Rover owner or enthusiast or not, you can't fault them really for churning out cars that people still want to buy in their droves.
They don't. I mean, they sell themselves. That's what it was always very evident to me when I worked at a dealer. Is people didn't come in looking for anything else. They wanted a Land Rover, and they might not know what model they wanted, but they wanted a Land Rover, and that still happens today. But going back quickly to the anniversary models, the 50th and the Works VA, isn't it funny that, I know obviously they're a lot cheaper, but enthusiasts have got hold of 50ths now, and they actually use them. Like there's a couple here. When do you think, if ever, we'll start to see 70th anniversary Works V8s turn up at enthusiast events?
That's an interesting one. I think it's funny, the price point has moved somewhat. I think the list price for a 50th when it was new was £25,995 in the UK, and Works V8 when it was launched in 2018 for the 70th anniversary was from £150,000. So that movement into the affordability may take a bit longer, but I think it will happen. And I think, it's interesting, but I think the one thing is the scene is going to keep going and going. I think over the past few years, the enthusiasm, the shows, and the age profile of the people using them, it's great to see younger people going into Land Rovers as well. So I think, yes. But how long will it be? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I'm sure as a magazine we'll be covering the first modified Works V8.
Finding the right parts for your Land Rover or Range Rover shouldn't be an off-road challenge. At bmh4x4.com, we've built a smarter way to get you back on track. Our new website is now live. The simple, fast and reliable way to find the parts and accessories you need. Supplying quality parts for Defender 1983 to 2016, Discovery 1, 2, 3 and 4, Range Rover Sport 2005 to 2013 with Range Rover P38A and L322 coming soon. All parts are backed by expert knowledge, quick delivery and a 2-year quality guarantee. Visit bmh4x4.com, built by enthusiasts for enthusiasts.
Yeah, I mean, Land Rover's only these special editions that they churn out now and again now, and then they're always like invite their customers. They choose who they want to sell one to, and they're commanding prices, well, in excess of £200,000 now, aren't they?
Oh yeah, definitely. The demand is still there. I just think the demand's coming from different places, and Land Rover JLR seem to be obsessed at the moment with special editions. Like the number of press releases I get about Range Rover and Sport special editions, I think they just come up with new special edition every 2 weeks. And it's because of that ultra exclusivity that people want, or people seem to be spending money, which is interesting because way back when, you know, special editions were, dare I say it, special. They were rare.
They did feel special, didn't they? You knew that no one else would have one, and now they've just sort of merged a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I remember when Defender Silver and Defender Black came out, and there wasn't really a great deal to show about them. They had, I think they had an external roll hoop.
Well, yes, it wasn't even that. It was described as a windscreen protection bar. But yeah, there was a black and silver edition. But yeah, I think now, I think currently, as you say, if you go on to Land Rover's site, they've got a whole raft of special editions on Evoque, Discovery Sport, and through Discovery 5 and whatnot. So, but I think it's you know, from a marketing point of view, it's kind of really, you know, it's fresh models, and you know, regardless of what the content is on those models, it keeps them in the press and going. But it's also interesting that Landmark and a few of the other names that we know from the past are being used again. I like that.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah, Landmark, Pursuit, there's a few other... Metropolitan's still going strong, yeah, absolutely. Current Discovery, you can get in
Metropolis, actually.
That's the one. Yeah, beg your pardon, it's Metropolis, isn't it? Yeah, still going strong. It is interesting. Actually, regular readers will have seen and heard about my exploits taking a standard Discovery 5 Metropolis over Strata, Florida near Christmas. And I actually saw one the other day, even dirtier than that one when we got back, and it had all terrains on it, and I thought, fair play.
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time with the XXXV, wasn't it? Their 35th anniversary edition. And I've never really taken to the Discovery 5 until I spent a week with it. And then all of a sudden, I noticed them on the road now, and they kind of stand out more than a new Defender.
I wonder, there must be a couple here at least. I've not actually made it out into the camping field to see what the most recent model is that's come to LRM Live, but I'm sure I'll go for a little lap later on and have a little look, see what's out there that's new and current. But it's really good to see certainly things like Freelander 2s, Evoques coming up through the ranks now, really getting embraced by enthusiasts. The guys at Muddy Mods do a great job championing that. There's really no stone left unturned as far as the enthusiast scene goes. As soon as the cars, you know, drop enough to be attainable by the vast majority of us, they get picked up, and then companies come along and develop loads of great bits for them.
Yeah, and then just talking about like Land Rovers that you sort of like might not avoid, but kind of never really take a lot of notice of, and that probably goes down to like the Freelander 1. And there's a Freelander 1 near us. I think our friend Ian Arthur took a picture of it. That blue...
Oh, yeah, Monte Carlo Blue Sport Edition.
Yeah, what a cracking example that is. And that is a kind of car that actually makes you stop in your tracks.
They fly under the radar, and then you see one, and you think, well, I've not seen one I haven't seen one out in the wild for years, and it really does grab your attention. There it is. Greg's got the picture.
Yeah, and that's what makes that special.
It's a stunning car. Another thing I want to keep an eye out for later is the P38 Range Rover. I've not seen too many of those kicking about this weekend, but lots and lots of classics. L322, Adam, I see ya. There he is over there. He's got his L322, which we had in the arena earlier on. Stunning example of a late TDV8. Yeah, there's all sorts kicking about.
Yeah, so great. Just talk about that sort of Freelander, and I walked past it, and that is an attainable car for somebody that's perhaps not into the scene yet, and one that will make people stop in their tracks and take note.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, they can be brought back round. I mean, a lot of them, this is the issue with certainly, I suppose, entry point vehicles like the Freelander, is they get too cheap. They go past the point of economical repair, and that's why so many of them fall by the wayside. So when it just goes to show they are worth investing in and bringing back up to standard, because that is a really, really tidy example.
And yeah, I mean, Greg reliably informed me earlier that we've got a guest coming on tomorrow who bought a yellow Freelander 1 and took it to the Himalayas, and that is Nick Dimbleby. So he'll be joining us on this podcast stage tomorrow, who has previously been on the podcast. So he's like Land Rover's official photographer and has had his entire career since apprenticeship to the current day worked for Land Rover.
I may have dropped him in it on that, but yes, he is coming tomorrow, and now he is.
So now
in
in peer pressure, you say he's coming on the podcast. So yeah, Nick will bring his yellow Freelander and put it on the LRM stand tomorrow.
For me, that vehicle demonstrates what a effectively standard Freelander can do. That trip, as you would have read in the magazine, is an amazing trip. Absolutely amazing trip.
Yeah, that trip looked amazing. Just to go to the Himalayas in a Land Rover that, of course, it had been through a workshop and it made sure everything was, mechanically perfect.
But it was still standard. It was just, it was right and fit and serviced and repaired. Ready for the journey. It wasn't a heavily modified car. It was a standard Freelander, and the trip it did was incredible. The experiences they got out of it were incredible.
Yeah, I mean it's an attainable thing to get into, and that drove the highest motorable road in the world. Not many people can say they've done that.
No, I was talking to Ron Brown in the arena earlier on on CVC Register. He had his Express Freelander 1 black door top, very very early car. And he was, again, another ex-Land Rover employee. And
he worked the floor above me at one point.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
He was going, saying about how when it first came about in development, and Mr. Land Rover himself, Roger Craythorne, was very sort of sceptical about whether it could really hold the torch for the brand. And then when he actually sampled it off-road, he came back and was astounded at just how capable Land Rover had made it, which is an important step because it was competing in, a pool of other, I suppose, in brackets, soft roaders, which looked like 4x4s but didn't really walk the walk off road, whereas the Land Rover Freelander had to live up to the expectations of the badge, and it really did do that.
I have always been mightily impressed with Freelander 1 and Freelander 2, having driven one off road and been behind. I mean, if I followed you on the Green Lane up in Yorkshire, didn't we, up in the Richmond area?
That's it, yeah.
What a fantastic thing to witness somebody else driving off road in a car that wouldn't ordinarily be there. They can put up with some abuse.
They've got the longevity as well. I mean, you don't have to drive far to see a Freelander 1 or 2 out on the road still being used, and that speaks volumes, really.
I'm just thinking back, many, many years ago, actually, we did a green laning trip through the Brecon Beacons, and I was in, not the 90 I've got now, I was in a 90, we had a 900 TD5, and one of the guys brought Freelander 1 along, and we were kind of ribbing him, joking him about this. That little 3-door Freelander he had, it went everywhere. And it was like, well, if I don't make it, I'll meet you at the other end. And he literally got everywhere. They are really capable cars.
So with the Freelander name, obviously people will be aware that the name's come back with the collaboration with Cherry. What's your thoughts on that, Rick? I think it's based it all, but
no, I mean, to be honest, the thing is, I don't actually know much about it. The joint venture and with Cherry, that's all sort of very recent times, since I left JLR. It's very interesting that they've revived the Freelander name, and it's quite interesting that they've got if you look at the rear of the vehicle, you can see in terms of design, they've mimicked the 3-door Freelander, where you had the hardtop that sits on a 3-door Freelander and the rear window. They've put that design feature on there. I think it's quite a bit bigger car, but I think it's also it's part of the market that they need to be into, and I think the car industry has changed dramatically, and Land Rover, in terms of their product, Freelander is a brand that will sit on its own as Discovery and Defender and Range Rover does now. And at the end of the day, there is a market for SUVs, electric SUVs, and I think Freelander fits in with that really well. I'd love to see one in the flesh. It'd be really interesting to see one, and hopefully you'll get your hands on one at some point.
Yeah, probably will actually, won't we?
Maybe.
Yeah. So you don't sound very enthusiastic, Martin.
I wanted to be, and I saw it, and I saw the styling cue, and I thought, oh yeah, okay. And then I learned it was 5 meters long, and I thought, yeah.
5 meters
It's
long?
enormous. It's as big as a new Defender.
This is the problem with the way new cars are going now. They're just getting larger and larger, and what sells cars now isn't necessarily its performance 0 to 60 or its performance off road necessarily. It's tech, and that's something that a lot of us core Land Rover enthusiasts aren't that keen on. we like the simplicity of a Land Rover, and I don't even have a radio in my TD5. Not that I'd hear it, but I enjoy listening to a TD5 engine and the mechanical aspect, and I enjoy driving it. Don't want all that tech.
I think that the challenge, obviously, in new cars is they've got to fit so much safety stuff in as well that they probably, by the time they built a car the size of the original Freelander, you'd have no space inside because you'd be surrounded by airbags.
Yeah, I mean, obviously safety is a core thing, and you know, I've seen a couple of Defenders very recently. You know, classic Defenders having had big impacts, and whilst, you know, fortunately both people had these impacts, you know, lived to tell the tale, they were sore afterwards, and you know, the cars that they crashed into, well one was a tree and one was another car. Those cars are more damaged. They appear to be more damaged, but the Defenders are pretty rough.
Yeah, they don't crash well.
No. And on that note,
Yeah, indeed. Greg, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll let you go now.
I need to rescue my car from the. I need to rescue my car from the ring after my disastrous Carkhana that I'm very glad you didn't ask me about.
Oh, we forgot.
No, we're not going there. But all you need to know is 624 points is not a good result.
Yeah, fair enough. Greg, thank you ever so much for joining us.
so that has been Greg King, everybody.
I can see on his face. He really doesn't want to come up, but I'm going to make him. Thank you, Greg. Come on, Brett. Come and have a chat. This fluorescent bib sporting chap is someone instrumental in the making of Land Rover Monthly magazine, and one that, you know, likes to mostly remain behind the scenes, but I've dragged him up here because Brett Fraser, everyone, an absolute legend, and the driving force behind making sure I don't make too many spelling mistakes. Brett.
I was going to say, without Brett, the magazine wouldn't read how it reads.
No. Brett is a sub-editor on Land Rover Monthly, and they normally, like I say, fly under the radar. But we thought he's come over and is offered to help us out at the show, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to really punish him here and bring him up on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And if there was an award for the furthest travelled, it probably would go to Brett, because you live in Australia for 6 months of the year.
Yeah, I sort of travel back to the UK, visit friends, family, but most of the time I spend my hours in Melbourne, in the sort of southern part of Australia. But it doesn't stop you working on the magazine. In fact, it ends up being a bit of a bonus, because while everybody else is asleep, I can start working on other bits of the magazine. So when they wake up again, it's all there and we're ready to go.
It really does work well.
I was going to have a joke there that Martin never sleeps, but looking at his bed hair, I would say he does.
That's what I'm working with.
I tend to get a few digs in about Martin's his haircut every day, but
Anyway, so if Brett, your history with Land Rover goes way back to a very important Range Rover that your father owned, I believe. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my father was in this business as well. He ran Car Magazine, and somehow he managed to buy a very, very early press fleet Range Rover, and that was our family car for many years. More recently, I discovered through the magazine that car had appeared in an article in another magazine where they had taken it, what they alleged was up the second highest mountain peak in Wales. After a bit of research, it turned out to be the 18th highest mountain peak in Wales. But anyway, they took it up the mountain. And when I looked at the pictures, I thought, that looks really familiar. And I looked at the number plate, and it was PXC 540J, and that was our family car. And my father hadn't been aware of the fact that this thing had achieved what it had. We just drove it around, and because he was friendly with the rest of the folk at Land Rover, they gradually, almost like a in situ rolling restoration, they upgraded the car with all sorts of bits and pieces, like power steering and seat backs that would flop back to where you're supposed to have them. It just sort of went on and on. He had suspension modifications done. And it was the car that he eventually let me just have a little bit of an early drive in when I was learning to drive. Obviously, I was so rubbish, he palmed me off to a proper driving instructor of a Ford Fiesta, and I never drove the Range Rover again.
There you go. There's, as we were just saying earlier, everyone's got a Land Rover story, and what a story it is. But does the Range Rover still exist? Do you know if it's still around?
No, as far as I'm aware, looking at the MOT history, it faded to dust many years ago. But going back to what the guys were saying a bit earlier about, especially about the resurrection of Freelander as a sort of a standalone brand, I think what that will never have is the stories that go behind the vehicles that you guys have all got. You know, there's no romance in any of these modern electric vehicles. You're not going to tell tales. You're not going to have a family album dedicated to it. You're never going to sort of pass it on lovingly to your children. I think we're living in a bit of a golden era. But I also think that the cars that we have now, they'll go on forever because there isn't a modern alternative. I think with the electric era, we've reached a point where we're not going to treasure them and cherish them in the way that older vehicles get.
You know your 4x4, you've chosen every upgrade, every bolt-on with purpose. So when it comes to tyres, chunkier, wider, more capable for the conditions, you want the perfect fit. Not just any tyre, your tyre. That's why you'll choose 4x4tyres.co.uk, the wheel and tyre specialists, trusted by Land Rover owners and serious off-roaders alike. Whether you're upsizing, overlanding, making your Defender look the part, or your Discovery turn heads, we'll guide you to the right set. With over 800 fitting locations across the UK, from online to on-road, we've got you covered. Browse by vehicle, wheel size or brand. 4x4tyres.co.uk. The right fit, the right place, the right price.
Yeah, that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier. You know, the sort of the next generation, a lot of them aren't that mechanically minded. You know, lifting the bonnet and checking oil isn't a thing anymore. You know, putting cars in garages because it won't start because it's cold the next morning is no longer a thing either.
I don't necessarily think that's the fault of young people. I think that's because their parents have grown up in cars that don't need the points checking and things like that.
It's just an evolution of the tech that's replacing the need to pull out chokes and wind down windows. You know, that's the nostalgia, I suppose, we are holding on to.
What is massively reassuring, though, is the number of emails and correspondence we get about this podcast and about the magazine from people who've just passed their test and they're like, I want to get a Series 3. What should I do? You see on Instagram all the time, younger people really are into Land Rovers, and it's so... Because I think there was a long period of time, people, like you said, didn't really seem interested, and now they are.
Yeah, Land Rovers have become cool, and when something becomes cool, they become a high risk. And, you know, guys like Adrian Flux Insurance, you know, lots of 18-year-olds. When I was 18, you could insure a Land Rover because it was cheaper than insuring a Vauxhall Nova, you know, and arguably less cool at the time. But as it's flipped around, you know, an 18-year-old now would struggle to insure a Land Rover, which I find is actually quite sad. But the risk has been raised, hasn't it?
I think... Yeah, I agree with you, but also the safety, the stealability of newer cars is a lot lower than it used to be. Like the Vauxhall Nova, you flip the hazard switch upside down and you'd have the ignition on and you could bump start it and drive it off.
How do you know that?
Someone told me. But newer cars, you know, you're not, especially like starter entry level cars like Corsas and stuff like that. They're not really stolen, whereas Land Rovers are, as we unfortunately know, which is why it's so important to layer up that security. Yeah,
I'm just walking around here. I mean, you know, go and see the guys. Headline sponsors to this show, Optimil, in fact. Nice segue there. But, you know, you can go and get some really, really good security devices for your Land Rover, like quick release steering wheels and swivel locks and things like that, because, you know, it's a thing that will put people off, you know, attempting to steal it.
Definitely. It's
and
all about
insurance premiums up.
Layering it up is key. And making it obvious that you do care about your Land Rover and you want to protect it, you know, it just makes it easier for them to move on to the next one, which is a horrible reality. But, you know, it's a necessary evil. And thankfully, there are loads of companies out there now doing really, really great security devices for Land Rovers. So, and some of them are here today. So go and see them and tell them what you need.
Yeah, and tomorrow, in fact, I just remembered. Simon from Powerful UK will be on this stage with us tomorrow. A rival podcast has been launched. He's teamed up with Russ from Defender, and we'll probably touch on this tomorrow actually, because he does trackers. I've got one of his trackers, so I know where my Land Rover is right now, and I can play back the many thousands of times I've driven around this showground yesterday, if I so desired. And having that peace of mind is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't cost a fortune to get your Defender secure these days either, which is great. But no, it'd be good to have a chat with those guys. I've not actually, I've met Simon very briefly in the past, but it'd be good to sit down and have a proper yarn with him.
I think what we'll do is we'll get Simon to bring his modified. He's got a modified, really lovely new Defender. So we'll get that by the LRM stand so people can have a look afterwards. And I saw that turn up this morning, in fact. Yeah, it was this morning. He sells all his parts in his cars, and it's amazing what you can do to a new car still, even today.
I was going to say, like, people don't waste time when it comes to developing stuff, and the new Defender's no exception. There's a whole raft of modifications out there now that you can treat them to. So be sure to swing by if you're here camping for the weekend. Swing by tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we'll have a good old chat with Simon and Russ.
So, Brett, when I first met you 15 years ago, we were working for Dennis Publishing at the time, weren't we? So you were on Evo magazine doing some subbing, I believe?
Yeah, I was doing bits and pieces for Evo, subbing, writing, photographing occasionally.
And so I used to sit literally behind you, as you would say, gobbing off.
Steve is very, very, very noisy.
Yeah,
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. So back then I was selling advertising for Land Rover Monthly, and the two roles were completely different. You needed peace and quiet. I needed to make noise. And I remember I went and bought Discovery 3 against your better advice at the time, because you were having a few woes of your own with your own Discovery 3.
Yeah, I'd gone out and against everybody else's advice, bought the D3 with a manual gearbox, and for, the first 50 miles, it was brilliant, possibly the best car I'd ever had. But then it started off, I think, with just some sort of seatbelt warning light coming on, and it just got worse from there. And as anyone who's got any of those D3 or D4, once one light comes on, it just cascades through the system. And this car eventually ended up travelling around on the bump stocks. I couldn't kick suspension up. Even after we repaired one of the airbags, the suspension kept dropping to its knees. And I had mentioned the fact that whilst a brilliant car in many respects, it would have to have the most perfect history and have been maintained meticulously throughout its life. And he still went ahead and did it.
Yeah, well, that the kind of example I bought, I tried to buy the very best. So that's the advice I'd probably give to anybody looking to buy any Land Rover: is buy the very best you can afford. Don't let your heart rule your head sometimes. I bought the very best I could afford, and I did 40,000 miles in the car. But probably in terms of like cost per mile, was the most expensive Land Rover motoring I've ever done. I never did see your Discovery 3. It never came back, did it?
Yeah, the tragic tale of my Disco 3 was that I gave it to my local mechanic and I said, put it in the back of your workshop, work on it as and when you can. And a year and a half went by and I'd sort of forgotten I even owned a Land Rover. Then I was about to head off to Australia, and I recalled a conversation I had with him much earlier where he said, I know you're going to say no, but will you take 500 quid for your car? And at the time I said, you're right, I'm saying no. But when my flight got closer, I actually had to ring him up and beg him and say, that 500 quid you offered me, is it still up for grabs? And he took the car, and it's still running to this day. And he discovered that what had caused the sort of cascade of electrical faults was the steering angle sensor breaking, the little plastic clip. And he super glued it back together again, and the car worked. But I can't begrudge him that, because investigating that and trying to find where the fault is takes forever.
Yeah, and that's the thing that can kill some of these cars off. speaking to a few garages as I do, workshop labour rates now are far exceeding sort of £100 an hour now, plus the VAT in a lot of cases. You could quickly burn through £600-700 on a repair for something that otherwise would be quite a cheap part to fix.
Yeah, I was going to say what you needed, Brett, was the workshop guide in the LRM a few months ago, where we showed you how to repair a steering angle sensor.
Yeah,
and
about a year and a half too late.
Sorry about that, but yeah, it's we continue to strive to do very, very nice, relevant tech content in the mag. So as we've already said before, do feel free to swing by the LRM marquee and grab yourself a subscription. We've got some great gifts on offer this month as well.
Yeah, so we've got for anyone that hasn't subscribed yet, we've got 2 deals actually going on at the moment. So you can choose between a Sealy workshop lamp, perfect for fixing your Land Rover at the side of the road, and a socket set. At the end of the day, who doesn't need more tools? So we've got those 2 offers on.
You can never have too many, and at a special price as well. So go down and see the guys on the stand, and they'll sort you out. But for now, I reckon we'll probably wrap it up, and we'll see you again tomorrow with a fresh batch of guests.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, cheers.
Enjoy your beers, and see you soon.